Lily never expected to find something strange living under her bed, but when she discovered a cluster of peculiar eggs, her fear mixed with curiosity. Unsure of what they were or where they had come from, she immediately ran to her parents for help. They didn't believe her at first, but seeing the panic in her eyes, they reluctantly agreed to check. When Lily led them to her room, both her parents, Oscar and Hilly, were stunned by what they saw. Warm to the touch, the eggs felt more unsettling by the minute. Uncertain and nervous, they decided to call an expert for help. Within minutes, the expert arrived at their doorstep, asking them to describe the eggs. When shown a picture of similar eggs, the expert's face turned pale. He rushed upstairs to see for himself and, after a long and tense silence, screamed in horror. But before we dive into the story, make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our exciting stories. Oscar tried to stay calm, but couldn't contain his frustration anymore. He demanded answers, but the expert's only response was a quick call for backup. Before long, a team of professionals in white hazmat suits arrived. They carefully moved Lily's bed to get a closer look. What they discovered beneath it made them pause in disbelief. 5 large eggs that seemed ready to hatch at any moment. As the team secured the room and taped it off, the family's concern grew. The expert refused to provide details, only saying that the situation was too dangerous. In a twist none of them could have imagined, the police were called to assist, and the family was soon escorted out of their home without explanation. Oscar, Hilly, and Lily were separated and placed into different police cars. Oscar couldn't believe how quickly everything had escalated. As he sat in the car, confused and worried, he could hear his daughter crying in the distance. The sight of his house, now surrounded by men in hazmat suits, seemed surreal. After what felt like hours, Oscar was transferred to a different vehicle, driven by someone also dressed in white. The driver didn't respond to any of his questions, and soon they arrived at a mysterious facility. Oscar was led into a room where he was told to wait. It felt like a prison cell, but no one had explained what was happening. Finally, a man in a white suit entered the room, introducing himself as Alex. He explained that their actions were necessary due to a virus linked to the eggs found in Lily's room. Oscar's heart sank as he demanded to know where his daughter and wife were. Alex hesitated before revealing that Lily had fallen seriously ill and was being treated. The virus, although rare, was dangerous, especially for young children like Lily. Oscar was desperate to see his daughter, but Alex insisted that Oscar be tested for the virus before he could visit her. After an agonizing wait, the results came back negative. Relieved, Oscar was allowed to visit Lily, though he had to wear a protective suit and follow strict protocols. When he finally saw her, his heart broke. Lily was lying pale and weak, hooked up to various machines. Hilly soon joined them, having tested negative as well. Together, they sat by Lily's bedside, offering her comforting words despite their fear. Alex and the medical team were doing everything they could to save her, but the virus was new, and there was no known cure. The only option left was risky. Oscar's blood might hold the key to helping Lily recover. Without hesitation, Oscar agreed to the blood transfusion, hopeful that it might save his daughter. The doctors quickly tested their blood types, and thankfully, they were compatible. The transfusion began, and the family could only wait and pray that it would work. Oscar sat by Lily's side, watching the blood drip slowly into her veins, his heart heavy with worry. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the machines that monitored Lily's condition. Hours passed, and finally, there was a sign of improvement. Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Oscar's relief was overwhelming as he gently called her name. Though weak, Lily was awake, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic. They explained that she would need to stay for observation, but if her condition continued to improve, she might be able to go home soon. However, there was still a lingering issue. Their home was under lockdown and had to be thoroughly decontaminated due to the eggs. The experts couldn't allow the family back until it was completely safe. In the meantime, they arranged temporary housing for Oscar, Hilly, and Lily, where they could stay until the house was cleared. As they settled into their temporary accommodation, Oscar couldn't stop thinking about the strange eggs that had caused all this chaos. What were they? Where had they come from? He demanded answers, and finally, Alex agreed to tell him. But only if Oscar signed a non-disclosure agreement, promising never to reveal the truth. Desperate for answers, Oscar signed the contract. What Alex revealed shocked him. The eggs were not from any known species on Earth. They believed the virus that had affected Lily came from these alien eggs, which had somehow made their way into her room. The situation was unprecedented, and even the experts were still trying to understand the full scope of the danger. Oscar was overwhelmed by the revelation. The thought of extraterrestrial eggs being in his own home, threatening his family's safety, was almost too much to comprehend. But for now, his focus remained on Lily's recovery and keeping his family safe. As Oscar processed the shocking revelation, his thoughts turned to his family's safety. Although Alex had shared what little information they had, it was clear that the situation was far from over. Lily's condition had improved, but they were not out of danger yet. The doctors continued to monitor her closely, and the family waited anxiously for updates. The next day, the doctors confirmed that Lily was recovering well and that the transfusion had worked. They were cautiously optimistic that she would make a full recovery. The relief in the room was palpable as Hilly and Oscar embraced their daughter, grateful for the progress she had made. However, the lockdown on their home continued, and the experts were still investigating the eggs. Oscar pushed for more information, but Alex remained tight-lipped. He explained that the eggs were being studied at a secure facility and that the government was now involved due to the potential threat they posed. Oscar and Hilly were warned not to discuss the situation with anyone, and their home would remain sealed off until further notice. In the meantime, the family tried to return to some sense of normalcy. They remained in the temporary housing provided by the authorities, grateful that Lily was on the mend. But Oscar couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He had too many unanswered questions and a growing sense of unease about what they had been told. Days passed, and finally, the authorities declared their home safe. The decontamination process was complete, and Oscar, Hilly, and Lily were allowed to return. As they stepped back into their house, everything seemed eerily quiet. The room where the eggs had been found was empty, the bed back in place, and no trace of the strange events remained. Despite the assurances from the experts, Oscar couldn't help but feel that their ordeal wasn't truly over. The thought of those eggs, their origins still unknown, lingered in his mind. And though the family tried to move on, there was always a sense of something unresolved, a mystery that might never be fully explained. The family had survived the crisis, but Oscar couldn't help but wonder, was this really the end, or just the beginning of something far more sinister? As days turned into weeks, Oscar couldn't shake the uneasiness that had settled over him. The memory of the strange eggs under Lily's bed haunted him, and despite the reassurances from the experts, something still didn't feel right. Every creak in the house made him wonder if they were truly safe. Lily seemed to recover fully, showing no lingering effects from the virus, but Oscar noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She was quieter than usual, often staring off into space, as if deep in thought. When he asked her about it, she shrugged, saying she felt fine, but Oscar couldn't help but worry. Meanwhile, Hilly tried to bring a sense of normalcy back into their lives. She focused on keeping the house in order and planning fun activities for Lily. They had been through so much as a family, and she was determined to move forward. But Oscar's mind remained restless, consumed by the mystery of the eggs and the virus that had nearly taken his daughter's life. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Oscar sat down with Hilly to talk. "Do you ever think about the eggs?" he asked her quietly, unsure of how she would respond. Hilly hesitated for a moment before admitting, "I try not to. It's too strange, too terrifying to think about." "I just feel like there's something more," Oscar said, his voice filled with frustration. "We still don't know where they came from or why they were in our house." Hilly nodded, understanding his concern. "But what can we do? The experts said everything was taken care of. We have to trust that they know what they're doing." Oscar wasn't convinced. "But what if they don't know? What if this is just the beginning of something bigger? We're sitting here waiting. And what if more of those eggs are out there, somewhere?" Hilly put her hand on his. "Oscar, I understand. But we have to try to live our lives. For Lily, we can't let fear take over. We survived this, and we'll face whatever comes next. Together." Oscar sighed, knowing she was right. But deep down, he still couldn't shake the feeling that their story with the eggs wasn't truly over. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Lily seemed to have fully recovered, and the strange events that had occurred in their home began to fade into memory. But for Oscar, the feeling of unease never completely left. He stayed alert, always watching for any sign that something might be wrong. Then, one night, something happened that brought all his fears rushing back. Oscar woke up to a strange noise coming from Lily's room. It was a soft, scraping sound, like something was moving against the floor. His heart raced as he jumped out of bed and ran to check on her. When he opened the door, he found Lily sitting on the floor, staring at the space under her bed. His blood ran cold as he approached her, asking softly, "Lily, what are you doing?" Without turning to face him, she whispered, "I heard them again, Daddy. The eggs. They're back." Oscar's heart pounded in his chest. He dropped to his knees beside her and looked under the bed. To his relief, there were no eggs, just the usual clutter of toys and shoes. But Lily's voice was trembling as she spoke again. "They're coming back. I know they are." He hugged her tightly, trying to soothe her, but deep down, he couldn't shake the terror that gripped him. Was this just a nightmare, or was there more to it? Could the eggs truly be returning? Over the next few weeks, Oscar became more vigilant than ever, checking Lily's room every night, listening for any strange sounds. But there were no signs of the eggs or anything unusual. Then one evening, as the family sat together for dinner, the phone rang. Oscar answered it, and on the other end was Alex, the expert who had first discovered the eggs. His voice was grim as he spoke. "Oscar, I need to see you. There's been a development." Oscar's stomach dropped. He hadn't heard from Alex in months, and now the dread he had been living with seemed to come crashing down around him. "What happened?" Oscar asked, his voice barely steady. "There have been more eggs found," Alex said. "We think it's starting again." Oscar's world spun as he realized that the nightmare they had thought was over might just be beginning.